A single cyber attack can disrupt internet service for one or many, yet many customers and some ISPs are unprepared. When slowdowns or outages occur due to scams, malware, or denial of service attacks, customers often blame their provider, damaging trust. Without strong security, ISPs face service disruptions and frustration. This podcast explores real threats, defense strategies, and ways to educate both operators and customers on cybersecurity challenges.
Vikram, founder and CEO of Nandi Security, cybersecurity and AI nerd by day, soccer and cricket nut by night.
My name is Nathan, and I'm the IT director at People's Telecommunications, and I'm also a certified unmanned aerial systems operator.
Hi, I'm Dustin, Director of Network Operations at Diller Telephone, and security researcher and family man.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you both doing?
Wonderful. How are you guys?
Awesome. We have an exciting topic today, and welcome to everyone listening. We have two cybersecurity practitioners, and we're going to keep talking about all the cybersecurity issues that affect broadband providers, especially rural broadband providers. And today's topic, and I thought this was very apropos to the discussion. I don't know if you guys saw this new Netflix show called 0 Day. It's a limited edition show, 6 episodes. It came out, my wife and I binged it. Was it a great show? It was a good show, but was it a great show? I don't know. But the thesis of it was actually very, very interesting and very apropos to what we do in our daily lives, right? So without giving the storyline away, and I'll tell you even less information than what's in the trailer. But basically, the thesis of the whole show is that there's a cyber attack that lasts for exactly 60 seconds, and the entire country is shut down. It affects everything: power grid, railways, airlines, individual devices, etc. And while it's happening, every single person gets a single line message on their phones that says, "This will happen again." And it happens for exactly 60 seconds. And in that 60 seconds, there's so much damage that's caused because hospitals, systems shut down, et cetera. So thousands of people die, right? So who caused it? Why did this happen? Can it happen again? And when will it happen again? How much? So that's the whole series, right? So that set me thinking, right, about what is, the question is really, is fact closer than fiction? Right? Or is fiction, or is fact stranger than fiction? Right? Is this something like this really possible? Is this just fantasy? And I think as practitioners, I think it's closer to reality than we think, if not actually much more feasible. And why is that? Right? What is it that we are seeing? And just thinking about like what's been happening in the past several months, we've seen multiple US telcos being breached by nation-state actors, US and foreign telcos being breached by nation-state actors, specifically one nation-state actor. But we ourselves at Nandi, we also found evidence that it's not just one nation-state actor, there's other nation-state actors, and it's not just the big telcos, it's all the smaller telcos, rural telcos, et cetera. Rural broadband providers, I should say, not telcos. So with that in mind, right, so the way this attack happened was there were so many devices that got involved in the attack, and so many devices that affected the people everywhere, right? So that brings us to the question of like, okay, so it's all the devices around us. If they were to one day turn on us, is this something that can happen, and is this something that can be triggered, right? So let's just start with this, and maybe I'll just start with this quick set of questions for the two of you. So how many devices do you each have in your homes? You guys are technical, so if you're to hazard a guess.
I would say at least 20.
I have probably over 50.
Oh, geez.
Okay, you guys just admitted you're technical, right? The average, depending on who you believe, whether you believe Deloitte or whether you believe Parks Associates, is about 20 across the entire United States. But for the most part, what we see from our traffic in the rural broadband ecosystem, we believe the volume might be closer to like 5 to 8 in the average household. But yes, there are always power users in every neighborhood. Um, so let's then talk about this, right? So, how many devices came into your home during the holidays? And that's a loaded question.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
And you'll have to think about it as not just devices you bought,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
also guests who came in.
Yeah.
Came in because it's the holidays.
I would probably say everything that was connected to the internet probably easily doubled. I
Okay.
couldn't give you an exact count on the devices, but as far as things connecting up and usage, I'd say is probably about double.
Yeah, we got 4 or 5 devices that are going to stay in the home that were gifts to different people.
Mm.
Okay. Got it. So, so you have basically the world at that point, if you are an IT administrator, is you have a bunch of managed devices, and then you have a bunch of unmanaged devices also on your network. And then second is you have brand new devices that you intend to manage or might semi-manage, right? Or only have the ability to semi-manage, which really brings me to the question of the story of what happened in your household. So, Dustin, if you could just walk us through how did that device get into your home, and why am I justified in calling it semi-managed?
Well, we'll just start at the beginning. The granddaughter was wanting my cell phone and grandma's cell phone to play games and stuff on. So my wife thought, hey, we'll just get him a little kid's phone, nothing serious, no crazy stuff on it. And we'll just get a cheap one off of, whatever provider she got it from. So grandkid opens it up over Christmas and she's like, oh, this is great, and it looks pretty harmless. It's a little skin pulled over. It looks like an Android phone or something like that. Cute little cat, harmless looking. So I was like, hey, let me charge this up and power it up and just look it over real quick. So I did that. And I noticed the time zone was in Chinese right away. I was like, huh. I was like, let's just stop a second. So I basically set up a sandbox on my home lab and put a monitoring on the WAN port of the incoming. Well, I sat there for about, 5 minutes or so, just to see what normal traffic looked like. And everything looked copacetic. Everything was happy. And then I decided, hey, let's connect this little kid's phone up and let's just see what goes on. So we hook up the phone and I'd say it's probably within 2 or 3 minutes, traffic just starts going crazy. I'm like, that's kind of weird. I'm not doing anything, you know? So I got to just watching the traffic flow and stuff like that. And I was seeing things.
Let me ask you a question right there. So at this point, you've not even set up an account. You just connected this thing to your Wi-Fi network so far. Is that
Yeah,
a fair way to paraphrase what's happened? You connected this thing to the Wi-Fi network. That's it.
yeah, we just gave it internet and set it down on the table. And yeah. So I'm sitting there watching this thing and we're getting things for like Facebook is going across, and I just thought that was really weird. It's a kid's phone just sitting on the table, not doing anything. Okay, we had some of that. I saw a couple Russian addresses go by and just some weird DNS action, and I just sat there a little bit longer. And all of a sudden, I noticed this one IP just starts stealth scanning the entire, IP. And I mean, it was throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it. I mean, it was just, it was ridiculous. I was like, wow, you guys were really not trying to mask this at all.
Well, they weren't expecting a 4 or 5 year old kid or whatever your grandchild's age is to have access to Wireshark.
Yeah.
Right. That's literally what happened here, right?
Yeah.
But this is just bad on so many levels, right? And it's first of all, it's a known kid device. So as a vendor, you can't be collecting information about this child
Hmm.
uh, by any kind of social network activity. And then this security activity also, which is extremely suspicious security activity
Yeah.
that you're discovered on top of it. And I'm sitting here when you first told me the story, right? I'm sitting here thinking, this is a phone like I've never heard of this toy. Like I've never wherever they picked it up from, like it's not like it's on ABC News and everybody's saying buy this thing. It's like, but it's out there all over the country. People are buying this device and they've taken the time to put all this kind of behavior onto this completely innocuous device that nobody even thought of, right? Now you have all the security cameras, our connected light bulbs and thermostats, um, etc., where it almost feels like they've gone through all of that and done enough there that they're looking at pretty much everything else, which leads to that the definition of advanced and persistent, right? Which is that they're thinking about absolutely every possibility in which they can exfiltrate data and also collect information of various other kinds and possibly use the device for various nefarious purposes.
So what I was gonna do, since I hooked the phone up and seen that, I also got to look in there, and my thermostat's also on the network. So that's gonna be the next thing we tear apart.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what it was doing with the scans, and also whether it was trying to connect up to other devices. I mean, it could have one. There could be one semi-legitimate reason. I mean, if it could be connecting to like an Alexa or something like that, so that can be Alexa controlled. But for a phone, that makes no sense, and for a kid's phone, that makes totally no sense. But if there's a rug to hide under, that might be the one that they could hide under.
Well, here's something else I got to thinking about. I got to looking at it. Okay, yeah, this phone is possibly malicious and all that. With that being said, where can I go with this access if I was them? What can I do? So I got to looking at all the things, and it didn't really look like, it just looked like it was a skin over a cheap Android phone, basically. So my guess is there's probably a rootkit in it, but I didn't get that far to check that part. But another thing that really concerned me was they're advertising on these little kids' toy phones that, hey, you can take videos, you can take, photos, you can record this, record that. Well, that's fine until the kid asks you, like, hey, I would like to get this off onto my home computer or a flash drive. I want to email it to a friend or, stuff like that. So they said, oh, yeah, just plug the USB into your computer. And that kind of really threw up some red flags. I was like, I don't know
No.
if I want to do that yet.
Well, I didn't realize that this phone had the ability to take pictures and audio as well. That's also, there's a creepy element to this. If
Yeah.
they're able to exfiltrate data, you're like getting pictures of kids and whatever kids are taking pictures of,
Hmm.
and possibly recording their voices, etc. That makes my skin crawl a bit. Sorry.
Well, I
Uh,
mean,
Yeah.
Nathan, you're going to say?
I just said, oh boy. Yeah.
well, like, here's how I thought about this. I'm going to put on my bad guy hat for a second. If I was an adversary looking at a target and I wanted persistence on that target for X amount of time until I decide to do whatever, what better way to go into a network and stay places that don't necessarily have antivirus or monitoring on them? It's like those things are the things that we really need to think about, as people are putting more and more of these devices on their network, is let's just stop for a second and just think, what are we really doing,
Yeah.
before we do it?
But it's also an easy question for you, me, and Nathan, and Nathan to have a ask. But think about it from the perspective of someone who's not technical. There is no way to even know when you're picking this up off the shelf. What is how are you, your sense of, you should have that dark alley, walking into a dark alley mentality, and every sense in your body needs to be coming up. There should be something about the labeling. There should be something about any of the information that's on the box that should trigger that, right? And people need to have those kind of um, uh, uh, evaluation thought processes as even as they pick it up off the shelf, right? And it needs to be non-technical because we can understand the risk, but think about the average person who's just going out to buy toys for Christmas.
Yeah. Yep. Times are getting tighter, people are looking to save money where they can and still give their kids that same level of enjoyment. It makes sense from a parental standpoint, but from a security standpoint, it's really scary.
Well, this may also be a way for them to spray and pray, but also target specific people, right? So if they know there are rural broadband headquarters or offices, what's the closest malls? What are 2, 3 closest malls? And maybe we flood those shops with these kinds of devices. Maybe it's not just the phone, but it's also other toys, other devices, etc. That's not hard to do. It's retailers, and it's a question of having those relationships with these retailers, etc. Right? So they will know at some point somebody in your household will pick up one of those devices, right? It might be a light bulb, might be a thermostat, it might be a toy phone, right? And that's stomach churning because now they could use that same methodology to target a lot of other kinds of people as well, right? So, all right, Dustin. So here's the cool stuff that you've done, right? So you captured a PCAP capture and ran it through Wireshark. We're sharing it in here. So if you could walk us through what you started to see, and you had this running live, right? As it was spitting out traffic. So walk us through a couple of things, what you saw technically and at what points you started to go, whoa, and at what point you started to feel it deep in your stomach. So let me...
Just the whole time.
Just the whole time. So walk us through this if you can.
Okay, so basically what I did is I piped everything into Wireshark that was hitting the WAN port, and this source IP showed up. And if you look at the Wireshark capture here, go ahead and pause it, Vikram. If you look at the Wireshark capture here, you have your source column, which is the IP of the person that was doing the stealth scan, and then the IP of the target, and basically what protocol it was using to try to establish communications, with that IP. If you go a little bit further over to the right, you'll notice the length of all these packets is the same, which is highly suspect. That's kind of what drew my eyes to that real quick. But then I started looking at the info column, and that high port number, the 43284, was coming from the perpetrator. But if you look to the right of the arrow, those are all the ports that were on the target side that it started doing a SYN scan with. So basically the purpose of a SYN scan is to send a half completed, packet back, and it's to avoid intrusion detection systems, stuff like that. So it never completes the handshake. So if the IDS is just looking for that handshake to be established, it's one way that it can bypass it. I mean, it's not perfect, but this person did put that layer of thought into this.
Continue the video. Yep.
So keep in mind that this was filtered based off of the one IP that I found. But what was weird is we started getting echo requests, DNS requests. Just a lot of weird stuff that this phone was just set down on a table. Nobody was touching it, nothing. Malformed packets, coming in. And this here was just a really small section. There was all kinds of stuff going on. Like they were trying to talk to SNMP using, there we go. Pause it just a second. Yeah, right there. So that's where the SNMP query came from. So they were trying to hit multiple different protocols to establish some sort of communication with this.
What what could they have connected to?
Well, it's kind of hard to tell, exactly what they were looking for with this because they're hitting every port. Now, if they were zooming in on one specific port, that'd tell us the port protocol that they're looking to communicate on. But if you go ahead and play the video again here, see if there's any other weirdness. So there, in the green line there, it was looking to communicate on port 80. So it was looking for something trying to communicate with HTTP. Let's see, what's the other one? Yeah, it was looking for network time protocol. Like I said, it was throwing the kitchen sink at this, trying to figure out how it could talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like they're just looking for a response from anything on these
Yeah,
protocols. And then they were interested in SNMP to try to find any kind of network devices that use that management notification protocol, like looking for managed routers or
and they were looking
things like that.
Yeah, they were looking for the default, public and private to get into that. But yeah, that's exactly what they were doing, Nathan.
It's almost like they were doing, like, I don't know if you guys saw this, use this app called Fing. It used to be around in the App Store. Yeah, it's almost like a Fing map of your network and trying to decide which devices are on and the types of devices, etc. Scan for that and then send that information back to the
Yeah,
mother.
so put on my bad guy hat for a second. Let's pretend I'm the bad guy looking at this IP. I'm going to try to establish whatever kind of communications I can with it. And basically, they're in the reconnaissance phase right now on the target. So they're going to start trying to gather up intel and build a kill chain to get into that network.
Exactly. So I got to ask this question, and I'll stop sharing at this point in time. But I got to ask this question, Dustin. This is all, you just put the phone on the table, didn't touch it, connected it. Did you do anything else with it afterwards, or did you hand it over to your grandchild?
I disconnected it and powered it clear down. I ran the battery down. I didn't want that thing set by any of my phones, nothing.
Totally makes sense, right? And for a really good reason. I mean, this is ridiculous to have a device, and well, also makes me think, what's our recourse, right? What do we as consumers do when we do find something like this? Who do we complain to? I mean, even with laws like COPPA, which is Children's Online Privacy, it's up to the vendor. What am I going to do? Call China? Like, that's not happening. And I got to walk the entire section of CES that's around home automation. And I didn't, it was so huge. It was so massive. Even over a 2-day period that I had free time, I was not able to walk that entire section. So I skimmed a lot, but there were so many companies. And I would say over 90% of them, or maybe it's just the sections I walked through, maybe I was data biased there, but more than 90% of them were Chinese companies. And these were all brands that I'd never heard of. And they're there at CES. So it's up to other companies, local companies, to meet with them and buy their product and resell it under their own brand over here, right? So we are probably seeing these same products under totally different brand names, etc. And these companies had everything, right? From door locks to cameras to light bulbs to like the thermostat sensors, the water, the humidity sensors that you put in your basement. Like they had every possible thing, right? And then they even had like some devices that you could ride around the house and toys. There were a ton of toys as well, little robot toys, etc. as well, that were all internet connected. So that once you told me about this, that whole experience came back to me, and it looks like we are now in a world where it is extremely Chinese dominated in terms of the home automation market. We are bringing these devices in without any kind of a filter to it. And if that's what, and when I say we are all broadband subscribers at the end of the day, wherever we live, right? So wearing your broadband IT security hats, what do you see, Nathan? Maybe I'll start with you. Nathan, what do you see as the risks to you as a user, number one, and then second, you as a IT security director for a broadband company?
Well, the first thing I would think of is the customer's experience, and then bringing in devices like this that potentially are vulnerable to them getting their networks hacked, and then having issues with their internet connections because of these devices, and then translating that into poor internet service quality and blaming it on the internet service provider when it's not our fault in the first place.
But it still falls on your head to prove that.
Right. Right. And so if they're not even aware of these types of risks and vulnerabilities being on devices that they're bringing into their homes, it's pretty hard to convince them that that's what may be causing the issues that they're having.
Yeah.
Dustin, your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. The only reason I got so good at analysis was just like Nathan said, I had to prove that it wasn't us.
Yeah.
In which that's no problem. But then after a while, you start getting the deer in headlights look and stuff like that. They just don't want to hear it. I don't know if you deal much with that, Nathan, or not.
Yeah, just right over their head. And you have to bring your explanations of how things work way down and use analogies that are easier to understand, like the pop-ups that are the fake scam tech support pop-ups are very hard to explain to somebody that doesn't understand that those are fake. They really do believe that their computer's infected with a virus,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to explain to them that it's just a fake pop-up in the web browser because it looks so real most of the time.
Well, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, everybody was doing peer-to-peer sharing. Well, that was the slickest way to get your stuff nailed. And then after everybody's sharing all this stuff, they're like, hey, why won't my computer barely boot up?
Yeah, also, peer-to-peer sharing are also a lot of those MP3 file players. People would just download random ones and next thing you MP3 file players and also video players for pirated videos. And then it'd be like, oh, why is my computer not booting up? Like, well, what did you do last? What did you download? It's a direct question, right? But that's the world you're in now, right? So Nathan, I'll come back to you. What's your approach to mitigation, right? I mean, this is one of those things that, at least from what I heard from both of you, is when the problem comes to you, you address it and you try to explain it as much as you can to these customers. But this is cost, this is time, this is effort, and it's different every time, right? I mean, explaining a pop-up versus explaining a nasty phone are like two separate storylines. Are there ways that you're mitigating these kind of risks today? Number one, are there ways in which you think you could better or mitigate these risks moving forward? Because this is a business risk.
Yeah, the first thing that we always try to focus on the high level, firstly, is education and trying to get them to understand how these things work and why they're a risk and why they're a vulnerability, and teach them how to identify whether or not something is real or not, and um, drive home the feeling of skepticism, to always have skepticism for anything you're doing online. And with text messages that you may get, you never want to reply to them, or the emails, and getting them to understand that if the bank is really texting you saying that something is wrong with your account, you should probably go to the bank or call the bank's official phone number. And the same thing is true with the pop-ups asking you to call random toll-free numbers. You just get them to understand, do not call the numbers. And what we do is we tell our customers to call us. If they're in doubt, call us, and we can tell them whether or not it's fake, and then help them recover their computer if it's stuck on there or whatnot. Secondly, we offer security products as add-ons And a lot of our customers that have been victims to these different types of scams and vulnerabilities will sign up for those security products after the fact. But it's good because now going forward, they're protected a little bit better. So,
Dustin, your thoughts?
Hey, Nathan, I got a real quick question to ask you about your approach. Do you also, when you're educating the customers, also explain the importance of updating your antivirus?
yeah, absolutely. And the
Yeah.
operating system updates.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vikram, I pretty much have the same viewpoint that Nathan does on this. I go a little bit deeper into it, though. I start doing the forensics aspect of it, like analyzing the network and known bad communications, shutting that down at the border, making sure they don't have a kill chain or a pathway to communicate. But of course, like what you said with the 0 day has no fix and you're not aware that it exists. So there's no protection from that,
Yeah.
Yep.
So let me ask the same question to both of you, but with a different scenario. Let's assume that there's an extremely popular brand of TV, like you come up with the vendor, right? And there was a big sale over the last 2 to 3 years in the shopping centers close to you for that brand. And a whole bunch of your subscribers bought that brand of TV. Let's just say hundreds of subscribers now own that TV in your coverage area. Now, there's a vulnerability in that TV, and it gets exploited. And suddenly, those hundreds of people who own that TV, they have a brick, not a TV, right? It's not working in some fashion, or something is not working right at the TV, but it's all consistent. Everybody's reporting the same issue. So who are they going to call first if the TV isn't working right? Probably going to call you, right? And say, hey, I'm trying to run all these shows. It's not working right. All these apps on the TV not running right. Now, let's ask the same question. Like, in that scenario, what would be your response process, right? For all other, this is meant to educate other providers like yourselves, right? Do you have a set process, or what would be your response process for something like this kind of a problem, where you have a mass outage scenario, but it's not your fault. It has nothing to do with you in the first place. How would you triage it? How would you investigate it? How would you come to a decision on it? And how would you communicate it? Maybe Dustin, you go first on this one.
So we got plenty of experience with, dealing with outages, right, Nathan? So you kind of have a set response until you know what's going on and all that. You really can't answer questions, and you don't want to be putting incorrect information out there, then withdrawing it later, back and forth like that,
Right.
causing uncertainty. So you'd want to do the same thing, the same sort of approach with this. You don't really want to put a finger towards the manufacturer yet, because that could open you up for all kinds of nastiness. But you need to get that message out there to those people. And a way we've been doing it is, and Nathan, you might be able to relate to this, is when there's an outage here, Facebook just lights up, So what we do is these security threats that I catch on our network, we try to go through Facebook, just to get the word out there, not disclose too much information because we may not have all the facts yet, So that's probably going to be your quickest, fastest way, because we're trying to train people not to click on weird emails. And with everybody trying to spoof, so-and-so administrator at so-and-so company, it's real. You don't want to get them into the habit of answering those, and that's the approach that we took. So the customer, we always tell them, hey, we will never email you. If there's a question about an email that came from us, call our office. Don't call any information on the email itself. And we actually ran into that problem too, is there was some things going down in one of our customer cities. The city administrators, sent an email to our billing department, and she looked at it and she was getting ready to process it and stuff. And she's like, well, I didn't, I don't know what this is for and stuff. Should I call him? And I got to looking at it. I was like, you don't know what it's for. I was like, tell me more about this. So I get more details and stuff, and come to find out the city administrator's account was hacked. So they were using a legitimate account and just shotgun blasting phishing attempts out. The phishing attempt looked very, very real, except for one thing. You get to the bottom of the email, and the phone number to call is not the office phone number. And I told her, I was like, cross verify this with the information you find on Google. So I'm trying to train them while responding to the threat. So it kind of gets tricky once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, your process, your approach.
Well, back to the TV thing. It's basically a process of elimination for us when the phone calls start coming in and they're saying they're having a problem with their TV, and then 2 or 3 phone calls come in and they're having the same issue. Now we're starting to have a pattern. So now it's about asking the questions of, where'd you get the TV? When did you get the TV? What's the brand of the TV? What's the model? And ask if they have other televisions in the home that are working just fine or not having issues. And then you can kind of narrow it down and say that it may be this television. And then I like the Facebook thing. We use Facebook to communicate these type of things with our customers, and we wouldn't necessarily need to be specific on the brand or the manufacturer. We could just say, if you have a new television that you got in this time period and you're having issues with it, we may have identified an issue with this television. Are your other TVs working? And come up with a post to not shift the blame, but make sure that the customer understands that they're not the only person having this problem, and that we are concerned for what's happening, and that we are trying to narrow it down, and give them a little bit of a safe mind that the internet provider cares about what's happening, and maybe eventually somebody will release a security notification, a government agency or something, and then it's not on the service provider to say the manufacturer, then it would be in the notification from CISPA or something.
This was fascinating because both of you had very different approaches. If you just notice, yours is very, let's go to the customer, talk to the customer a lot. Nathan, your approach, and give them, understand information directly from them. And your approach, Dustin, is let's look at what's happening in the network while communicating, while finding the channels of communication to the customer. So 2 different approaches, right? One is customer first, one is network first in approaches. But at the end of the day, you're both arriving at the same endpoint, which is the customer knows the answers, you know the reasons, and you're able to communicate that. That is really cool. I think we have a point at which we wrap up. So let's wrap up for today. Now we are missing one of the other key players in our group, Jerry. So Jerry should be joining us on the next episode. He is sick today, but should be joining us on the next episode. But moving forward, we will talk about a lot of topics around security, specifically around cybersecurity to the provider, cybersecurity to the subscriber. We'll talk about the compliance issues, all of the stuff that you guys love, and all the stuff that you guys go through on a daily basis. And we'll cover those in future episodes. So awesome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. Join us next time.